So how much money do authors really make? You're going to find out in a few minutes, because I've just finished having a chat with the amazing Annabel Smith. Now, I'm going to read Annabel's bio. She's the author of the interactive digital novel app The Ark, US bestseller Whiskey Charlie Foxtrot, and A New Map of the Universe, which was shortlisted for the WA Premier's Book Awards. Now, she is an Australian Council Creative Australian Fellow, holds a PhD in writing, and teaches for the Australian Writers' Centre. But Annabel is also quite well known for her blog posts about how much she earns and how much she makes as a writer. And not many people talk about how much they make as a writer. So Annabel is just a groundbreaker in that regard. So that's why I wanted to get her on the show. Let's have a really open conversation about how much she earns. I'm going to tell you how much I earn, and we're going to sort of demystify that whole process. And we talk about jealousy. We're going to talk about how do we celebrate people's success, being open, being honest, and being vulnerable. And we go through a whole bunch of really important stuff. So join me and let's get to know Annabel Smith. Annabel Smith, thank you so much for coming on my show. How are you?
I'm good, Josh. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, we are going to get straight into it, because I know this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to want to know. So why is it that writers don't talk about how much they earn to each other or to anywhere else? Why is it such a taboo topic?
I think money is generally a bit of a taboo topic in our society. So I think that's one factor. I think it's like considered bad manners to talk about money, but I think it's especially considered an issue if there isn't enough money or there's too much money. And so I think what often happens is writers who aren't making very much money at all don't want to talk about it, because there's a perception that how much money you make is a measure of how successful you are as a writer, and therefore perhaps a reflection of how good you are. And so if your books aren't selling well and you're not making money, you don't want to admit that, because that's almost like signaling to people, oh, therefore I must be a bad writer. So I think that's one kind of false perception around it. And then I think at the other end of the spectrum, because there are so many writers who are struggling, the writers who are doing really well are embarrassed to talk about it, because they feel almost guilty that they are actually making money from writing when everyone else they know is making almost nothing from it. And so I think they're kind of like, well, I'm not going to mention the money I make because it will sound like I'm boasting, or people will be resentful of it. And I have talked to a couple of people who are very successful in terms of sales, and they have said that the more successful they've become, the more resentment that they have been on the receiving end of, which is a really sad thing, because I love to see a writer who's actually making a living out of it. I think hooray for them.
I think they're sort of holding the light up for the rest of us to go, this is what you can achieve.
That's how I see it. Like, oh, wow, it's actually possible and awesome. Yeah.
Do you think the Australian tall poppy thing plays a part in that, where you want to see people successful, but you really don't, because it's like they're out of your comfort zone. They're up here now, and now, you don't want them boasting too much, is what you said. Do you think that plays a part?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I really subscribe to the idea of tall poppy syndrome being an Australian thing. I think it's a human thing. I think it's natural to feel jealous of people who are more successful than you, especially in highly competitive areas where it doesn't feel like necessarily the level of success is proportionate to the amount of effort you put in. I mean, you can have two writers who put in the exact same amount of effort and energy and time. Oh, whoops, sorry.
Is there a train coming through your home?
A train of messages. And then, so I guess, you can have two writers who put in the same amount, and one one person can have a book that's stratospheric and the other can't. And of course, it's difficult and painful if you're that writer whose book you might go, well, I work just as hard as that other person. Why are they being successful and I'm not? And I think it's a natural feeling. I think it's difficult to work hard on something and for it to be a commercial flop. And I've had that experience with my third book. I experimented with self-publishing, and in terms of sales, it was a disaster. I feel creatively it was a really successful project, but commercially it wasn't. And I really suffered from that. I felt really, really disappointed, ripped off, angry. And I think sometimes when you're in that phase, if you see a book that's doing really well, and especially if you think it's really not all that much of a great book, it's like, oh, it makes you really boiling mad.
And that is the honesty that I really love. I did an interview with kids author Adam Wallace, and he was saying the exact same thing, that it is only natural to have that jealousy, that pang. You see someone post up on Facebook, hey, got a great book deal with Allen and Unwin, I got an advance, yada yada yada, and you have that initial fuck.
Why isn't that happening to me? It's
Exactly,
so unfair.
exactly. And I think as writers, we've got to quickly use that and go, okay, how can we turn that around? What can we do with that? As opposed to let it fester, we can go, okay, reverse the roles. If that was me getting that, how would I want other people to react?
Yeah, I think that's really true.
Yeah, and that's how I deal with it.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we can do is reach out to people and say, hey, I noticed that you got a really great book deal and you got an advance. Do you mind talking to me about how that came about? Because, I would love to be published by Allen and Unwin, or, would you consider putting a word in with your agent to have a look at my book? Or we can ask each other for help. And I think that that's a really useful
That's a great way.
and healthy thing to do.
Yeah, I know, because look, as we all know, if you get asked advice, or if someone asks me, you're more than happy to help and offer it and support each other. And I think that's a really good way of actually turning that negative into a positive and going, okay, well, look, I'll reach out, ask for advice. How did they do it? Give me some inside information. Because that's the other thing about this industry, is that there are so many unknowns. Like, some people may know how to get a publishing deal. Someone doesn't know how to. Someone knows how to work out the international rights for something, and other people don't. And it's not like there's one big manual that you can just read. And it's like, and you don't find out unless you ask those questions.
That's true. And I also just think that when we feel resentment towards another person, it's because that person is an idea in our mind. They're not like a real person. But when we reach out and have a conversation with them, let's say we meet them at a writers' festival, or we might even email them or message them through an app. Hey, I hope you don't mind me asking, blah, blah, blah. And then they might write back and they might be very nice about it. And they might say, oh my goodness, that was just a gigantic fluke. I was so lucky. Somebody I knew this person. And they put my book in front of them, and they might be really humble about it. They might be as surprised as you are that they got that success. And then you no longer sort of think of them as this abstract, successful person who you can sort of feel resentful towards. You go, oh, they're a human just like I am. They have struggles just like I do. So you kind of make this connection to them.
I think making them a living, real person. Yeah, as you said, otherwise they're just a concept, and it's easier to be jealous of a concept than it is of actual real person that oh, okay, this is the reality of how they got that deal, or what's happened in the background.
I think as well, when we look at somebody who is successful and we hear about that success through social media, we are seeing the highlights reel. We have no idea how long they worked on that book or how many rejections they got. We only see the part where it's being published or winning a prize. So we might then find out, oh, they actually had 9 rejections. They reworked that book 6 times and they just couldn't make it work. And then we go, oh, okay, it wasn't so easy as it perhaps looked from the outside. That's the trouble with social media. It just only shows you the end product, the sort of woohoo part,
And I think that's where writers' festivals are good, because you can go along and hear the story of a book and hear how it got rejected 9 times, how they rewrite it 17 times, and how, you know, their grandmother died while in the middle of writing it and they got all stressed and all these other things. And then, you know, the book ends up winning an award and you go, hey, that's really well deserved. You know, I now know the story.
That's right.
It's been personified. I feel that. And and it's always the little stories about the successes that lead up to it. I think they give you that personality, that connection. Do you think social media people could be using that more to tell more of their story, the background, or
yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say the highest level of engagement I get on social media is when I tell the truth, and the truth isn't good. So when I say, recently I tweeted, I'm finding Twitter really difficult at the moment. I'm finding it really hard to read about other people's success. And I feel like my own writing is completely in the doldrums, right? And I get all of these people saying, oh my gosh, I feel you. I've been there. I know what you're saying. It's like, I think we all feel relieved to know that other people are struggling as well, because it's a very up and down journey, the writing journey. And I think when people only present the one side of it, which is the successful part, we go, oh, everyone else is having success, you know, and I'm not. Whereas the reality is everybody's having ups and downs, but they're only showing the ups. And so we feel alone in our downs. I mean, the fallout of that post is I was like, everybody share, you know, the worst thing that's happened to you lately with writing. And people are, I've had 6 rejections this month and this has happened to me. And it was like, oh, this is great. This is bonding. I feel so much better, you know?
Yeah. And as a community, you brought everyone together just by being vulnerable and doing that, showing that honesty. And I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be honest now. I find it hard to be vulnerable on social media about the down days, about, you know, I can share an insight I've had, like about a life insight, but about the actual writing journey, I only share the highlights. I'm only doing the tops, and because it's like, and I don't know why. Tell you the truth, I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I think one thing is, I do think that it's harder in our society for men to show vulnerability. I think that is possibly one factor. But I also think we are kind of, everything that you read on social media and about social media is all about big noting yourself. You know, you don't do a social media webinar that tells you to be vulnerable. It's just, that's not the message that's out there. It's all about, like, you know, pretend you're awesome 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that obviously is the wrong message to put out there. But I can write about my anxiety. I can write about childhood. I can write all these sort of things. But like, say, for example, this book here, halfway through the editing process for this, I got stuck about how to join the two elements, the back half and the front half of this book together. And I got feedback from my editor, from my publicist, and another lady, all came in at once. And they all said, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I literally had a meltdown, and I had to close everything off, go outside, cry in the garden for about half an hour and leave it for a week and then come back. But I didn't post anything about that on social media. I'm, you know, successful kids author, yada, yada, yada. But in the middle of that was the meltdown. And it's sort of like,
I think next time, show the meltdown. Show the meltdown. Everybody feels so much better when they know that other people are having meltdowns too.
Okay.
You know, I emailed this writer that I know. She was shortlisted for an award. She did this lovely blog post about the award ceremony and how wonderful all the books were and how lovely all the writers were. And I emailed her. I said, I'm just astonished at your level of grace around this. Like, when I was shortlisted for an award and I didn't get it, I went home and bitched about all the other writers and their stupid books. And I was just like really pissed off because the person who won it couldn't even be there to get the award because she was flying back from London where she had been shortlisted for the Orange Prize. And I was just like, you know, I just had a total hissy fit over it.
So you take your inner voice and you put it outside. Is that my outside?
Yeah, but so I said this to my friend, like, I can't believe you are dealing with this so gracefully. And she goes, oh, no, I'm not. I went home, I drank a bottle of wine, I cried. And I'm like, why aren't we saying that? Why aren't we saying that? I went to an award ceremony. I was shortlisted. I got home, drank a bottle of wine and cried. It's really hard being shortlisted and then not winning. It's a hard feeling. You know, we are still grateful that we were shortlisted, but we feel disappointed that we didn't win, and it's normal and it's okay to say it. Let's just be more honest.
But you get that side of it. Oh, you're not showing gratitude. You're not being grateful. You know, you should be lucky you got that far. You know,
Yes.
I'll use a similar analogy in the radio industry where I used to work. They use in the regional radio, they pay you absolute crap money, but you had to have this, I'm so lucky I'm working in radio because there's 100 other people behind you wanting to work into radio for crap money. So therefore you're not allowed to whinge about it because you should be so grateful for it. And yet there's all these people dying inside going, no, sure, it's a passion and I love what I do, but do I need to be paid so badly and yet to be so grateful for it? And I'm going to work overtime and all that because it's an industry everyone wants to do. No.
And the thing is, we can have conflicting feelings. We can be grateful and disappointed at the same time. You know, we can be grateful for this part and disappointed about this part. It's kind of like, you know, when my son was born and I had really bad postnatal depression, people said to me all the time, oh, well, at least you've got a healthy baby. And it's like, that does not help me at all.
Not helping.
I am like, not helping. I'm really struggling. Don't invalidate my feelings. Like, yes, I've got a healthy baby. And of course, I'm grateful for having a healthy baby. But that doesn't mean that I'm having a wonderful time every day. I'm having a horrible time nearly every day. And I'm allowed to say that. And I think we are allowed to say, I'm grateful that I was shortlisted. I'm gutted that I didn't win.
Yeah.
It was difficult.
Exactly. You know, I totally agree with that. And I think more open conversations on social media like that, I think are a good thing. It's, you know, I suppose the thing is sometimes if you have, you know, if all your friends are writers and all that, and 16 of them all in a row on Facebook are putting out, it's a bit of a shit day, I didn't do this or this happened or whatever, it can be a bit, you know, it can bring you down a bit, I guess. That's sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, if you keep seeing that.
I think, and I think when that happens, you just have to take a break from it. You just have to say, I can't look at social media. I have times when I think this isn't healthy for me. I'm not going to look at it for a while.
And step away.
I think coming back to the money thing, I think when I realized how much vulnerability was something people connected with was when I did my first blog post about my earnings.
Exactly. I'm just about to bring that up because that's when I saw that, I think I saw, was that a year ago or something you put it up or?
No, my first one was quite a few years ago. I think it was after Whiskey Charlie Foxtrot came out, maybe the year or so after that. And I was visiting a lot of book clubs to talk about the book. And people kept saying, are you making a lot of money? And it was like, are you joking? Like, do you have any idea how much authors make? I'm like practically dying of starvation, you know? And so I was kind of just baffled by this misperception that people made a lot of money out of books. I was like, this is crazy. And so I wrote this blog post. Here's how much I earned last financial year. I think it was about $7,000. You know, and I've had years much worse than that with my writing. You know, that was a relatively okay year. And oh my God, it went like viral on Twitter. Like everybody was talking about it. I was like, oh, this has really hit a nerve. No one talks about this. I don't think I realized that. And then I was like, oh, people want to know about this. And so then I started doing the blog series, How Authors Earn Money. And people just really respond. They're like, oh, thank God, I thought it was only me. And it's like, oh my gosh, we really need to be having this conversation more. If there's all these writers out there thinking, I'm the only one who made minus $50 from my book this financial year. You know, like when you get the royalty statement that says effectively you owe your publisher money, and it's like, thanks for that.
I had to ring him up because it said minus $20, and I'm going, do I have to pay you? Do I have to pay me to pay them $20? No, it's all right.
I know.
You know, it's like,
I know, but how about they just don't send you the invoice if it's like a negative? Like maybe they could work with us on that. Like, or could there be like a gentle note that comes with it? You know, hey, it's really normal.
They put a smiley face stamp underneath over the top of the little where the money bit is, the negative sign, little smiley face.
No, that makes it look like they're laughing at you.
Well, maybe
you make no money. I feel like they should have a note that says, hey, it's normal to make all your money in the first royalties period and then to make hardly any in the period that follows. So don't worry, this is really normal. And I know this, or I know this shows a minus, but of course you don't owe us money. You would never owe us money. It's just to let you know that we don't owe you any money this time around.
Okay, that's advice for all publishers watching this little thing, is you put a little note, like Annabel just said. I think that's a great idea. It's manage expectations.
Manage expectations, exactly. Yeah.
Because otherwise, because we know what writers are like. When I got, must have been the first maybe 3 years, I had a couple of little books out with my small publisher, and I'm desperately wanting to leave the day job that I felt trapped in, and I thought writing's going to rescue me from this, and so I quickly added up all my royalties, and I got excited, and I said to my husband, Andy, guess what? You ready? It was like about $2,500 after about 3 years. And I literally went into a depression. I draped myself over furniture. I just was sad and melancholy. You know, I started hand wringing. I'm looking out the window longingly, and I just go, this is not going to save me. I've got to stick to my boring day job now. And I know that countless writers think the exact same thing, have gone through the exact same thing.
Absolutely. And I think you're right when you say it's about managing expectations. So the media, the only story we ever hear in the media is, oh, Hannah Kent sold burial rights for $1 million. Graham Simpson sold the Rosie Project for $1 million. And it's like, we think, I'm going to sell my book for $1 million. What we don't, see in that picture is that is like maybe 0.1 of the books that were produced that year. Your chance of being the author who sells your book for $1 million is maybe 1 in 1,000 or possibly even less. So the notion that that's going to be you, I honestly, I was delusional. I thought I was going to be that person. I thought I was going to have a movie made. I mean, I do have delusions of grandeur,
It's good to have them. It's good to have them.
I think it's good to balance them with realistic expectations. And so, now I say to people, if you make $4,000 from your book, that is really good. You should be super proud of that. That's great.
And that's
if you make.
That is something I agree with, because it's like when you hear a figure, and like say you said 4,000, and that's really good, especially for an indie publisher or whatever. I think it makes you go, oh, okay, because sometimes it's not about earning the big dollars. It's about, where am I in the level of success here? Where do I place myself?
Yes.
And I know that
on the bell curve, where do I sit? Am I a total failure, or am I normal?
Exactly. I think there was a talk, I think, at the Disrupted Festival in Perth a couple of years ago, and they were talking about this sort of stuff, and had one of the publishers there, and she was saying that that a really successful, like a breakout book, a big book for an indie publisher would be 7,000 copies.
Yeah. That's like a big number of sales in Australia.
Yeah, and I'm going, really? Oh, whoa, well, that's not too bad. I don't feel so bad now. It's like,
exactly. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So when you hear that,
I think it is all about that. Like, a lot of it is comparing. So when the only figures we hear are astronomical ones, we compare ourselves to that. I was talking to a friend who she got a £50,000 advance for her first book. And when she told me, I was like, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, like that is incredible. Like my mind was blown. That was the biggest advance that I'd ever heard of anyone I knew getting. She was like, oh, I was really disappointed. I was like, what? She goes, well, one of the other people I did my master's with, she got a $500,000 advance. And I was like, okay, well, if you're comparing yourself to that, of course you're going to be disappointed. But if you compare yourself to the 90% of other writers who might get a $5,000 advance if they're lucky, or even a $500 advance, then you're going to feel like 50,000 is pretty bloody good going, you know.
I don't get an advance for my books at all. I never have. With a lot of indie publishers don't do advances anymore. Obviously,
that's right.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad of that because because then there's the expectation you've got to quickly make the sales up for the advance. I mean, if it's $500, it's relatively easy. But I actually look forward to getting that first royalty statement because I actually get money. As opposed to it's like, oh, I've already spent it, or, I got the car fixed, maybe got a new TV or something like that. But unless the money comes in, you go, yay, I've got the money, I'll put it through the system and all that. So let's actually talk dollars and cents here, Annabel.
Sure.
Your last financial year, can you do a breakdown for us of what you earned?
Oh,
are you able to do that for us? I know I mostly got you on the spot. Because then I'll tell you mine. I'm going to tell you exactly how much I earned last financial year and from what.
Do you want to tell us yours while I pull up my spreadsheet?
Okay, then, I'll tell you. Okay. So, I mean, one of the biggest misconceptions people have about who are outside the industry is that you only make money from royalties. And that is
a huge misconception. Absolutely. Yes.
And that was the least amount of my money. Okay. So this is for the 2019-2020 financial year. And of course, obviously the first few months of 2020 was all stuffed up with COVID. But anyway, author events. Okay. 9,542. And that included school visits. A lot of that was school visits. Personal book sales, because what I do, I buy the books off my publisher at 50%, and I offer the buy a signed copy, and I've got a PayPal thing on the website, and so people just buy off there. It comes in the mail. I just post it off. Bang, there it's done. So that was 6,636 of personal book sales, and that includes the postage though. I haven't taken the postage out of that, and of course that includes buying the books as well. So royalties for that financial year was 1,438. Okay. And that doesn't include this book because that came out last financial year, or this one. Lending rights. Okay. This is the library lending rights for the education of the public library lending rights, 1,164. And so total income altogether was 18,780. So nearly 19,000. And the expenses though, less all the expenses. So buying the books, travel, petrol, all the other stuff was 10,975. So the profit was 7,806.
Okay.
I can really survive and thrive on that. Like not.
That's what I always say. I always say that my royalties or my royalties themselves cover what I spend on chocolate.
Well, an author that I know, she calls the lending rights her new dress money.
Yeah, definitely. And that is like, you just get this little treat.
Exactly.
I found my little blog post. So what I could do actually, if you want, is I could do a screen share.
That'd be great. Are you able to? Do I need to do anything to make you do a screen share?
Maybe.
I love this. I'm not going to edit this out either. This is all going to be beautifully clunky as well. Now, while you do that, I added up just for this half of this new financial year up until the end of November, because something strange with COVID shifted, and I actually started earning more money, strangely enough.
Oh, that's
So
good.
I've earned nearly $10,000 this year,
Yeah.
this first half of this financial
Already.
year
Yeah.
already.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
and I
Yeah.
don't know. It's only because I've had to recalibrate, and I'm doing more, I suppose, virtual visits than I would have been doing in-person visits, and so those sort of things
Yeah.
add up. So
Okay.
that sort of stuff, but it's also
Yeah.
a couple of writers' festivals, and CB, the Children's Book Council Australia Book Week. I'm doing a whole 4 days, and that's good money there,
Oh,
and
great.
so all these
Yeah.
things just add up. Plus my own personal book sales that I've come in and stuff like that. So.
So I found definitely that, public speaking and things like that have just grown over time because people get to know you and what you do, and you build relationships with organizations where you go back perhaps year after
Yeah.
year and do things for them. So
Mm.
um, I find that for me has definitely grown. Now, it says that you have disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh,
So
how
if
rude
you
of
can
me. What
if
can I
you can fiddle
do?
around with
Here
that,
we
you
go.
can.
Multiple. Here we go. Here we go. Right. Now try it. See what happens.
All
It
right.
might work. But the thing is, people go, like they hear me say I've got $10,000 or whatever it is from this half of this financial year. But the thing is, I've spent 10 years building this, and it's like, and
That's exactly
you
right. It's
work your
not
butt
like,
off to try and build your author platform and get the
yeah.
contacts out there, and because I still want to make this into a doable living working career.
Right. And I think that that's a really good point to make, is that you can make a living from writing, but it won't all be from royalties, but you can make a living from work related to writing. But it
Yes.
might take you years to get to that point.
Yeah. No.
And you might
Exactly.
have to try a lot and kind of diversify your portfolio, I guess, is like learning to do a lot of different things. And I think actually, so you can see my
Yes.
screen now.
Yes.
You can see I do a lot of different kinds of things. So teaching was my biggest one. So that includes all the workshops that I do. And it also includes online teaching for the Australian Writers Centre, which is a regular gig for me. So yeah, that includes a lot of different bits and pieces of teaching, but that is by far my biggest income earner. I've also started to do a lot of mentoring in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So that was 16% of my income.
And that's
Public
obviously
speaking,
the second biggest one, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then third is public speaking. So that is, giving talks at libraries and festivals and things like that. So that was 13%. This year I got a little bit of money from grants. That was 9% of my income. I got $3,000. I haven't had any grant money for quite a few years, but there were a few COVID grants floating around that were a little bit easier to get,
I'm
which is
still waiting.
ironic.
I'm still waiting on word of a COVID grant. I've applied for it, and gee, they're hard to apply. The resilience grants that they're doing at the moment, like, oh my god,
Oh yeah.
my
Yeah,
brain
grants take
exploded.
a lot of time. They take a lot of time. Yeah. So chairing was, where's chairing? Only 3% of my income.
Now chairing,
Uh,
what's chairing?
so like when you are the kind of facilitator for a panel at a festival or something
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah, so I do
Like you
quite
did, with me at the Big Sky
at
Readers
Big
and Writers
Sky.
Festival. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love chairing, but it's a lot of, I mean, on paper it looks well paid. They say, oh, we'll pay you usually around 200 or 250 for an hour, and you go, oh, that's a good hourly rate. But then you go, okay, I've got 3 people in my panel. I've got to read all their books, find connections, link it to the topic of the panel. It's probably a good 10 hours work minimum to
Yeah.
do a panel.
Yeah,
And
and
then you go,
you
oh,
break that
great.
into an hourly rate. It's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, chairing isn't something I really do for the money. It's something I do because I love talking to authors, and I've met some amazing people. I've got to interview writers who I admire hugely, and it's such a privilege. So, but it's not like, oh, money spinner extraordinaire.
Yeah.
I do a little bit of freelance writing. So I sometimes write the odd blog post or article, usually about writing, they can be sort of relatively well paid depending who you write for and how long it takes you, or they can also be incredibly poorly paid. Once I got asked to do a piece, it was for a really good journal that I would have loved to be published by, but it was a really difficult topic that I would have had to do a lot of research for. And I worked out it would take me probably 40 hours, and they were offering me $400. And I was like, I cannot justify spending a week of my life on this project to earn $400. It's just not like doable. I need to stay alive. So so there we have, like, very low down the list, royalties and direct sales, which I bunch in together. That was $573. So a really, really tiny 2% of my income.
But when was the last time you had the book traditionally published for the royalties? Was that a couple of years ago? Yeah. So
no likes.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's the unwritten thing that your book has got a shelf life of 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, that's right. So
then it just all peters off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I do a little bit of consulting, like social media consulting. So that's like 1%. And then I had judged a short story competition. So that was a tiny bit. But I think, I suppose what's notable about it is I do a lot of different things that together add up to that much money. But this one big piece of the pie here is teaching. And that's an area that I've built up over many, many years and made contacts over many years in.
And I think that's one of the things, is that your experience as a writer and all the education that you've done, it's like, how can I monetize that? Become a teacher. And then the other thing is that the mentoring that you mentioned is like, oh, that's okay, brilliant. Let's mentor. I mean, I've got all this experience. How do I share this experience? And it's monetizing it, but it's also putting value on your experience. Because a lot of people, as you know, will say, Annabel, can you give me some advice on how to get published? Or, can you read my manuscript for me? And they all expect it for free. When no, you have to acknowledge that what you're contributing is worthy of being paid for. And I think that's a lot of this with this industry. People expect things done for free all the time, but no, what's in here and your experience amounts to a dollar value.
Absolutely. There's that classic apocryphal story of Pablo Picasso drawing like a scribble on a napkin for someone and then saying something like, there you go, that's, I don't know, let's say $10,000. And they're like, $10,000 for a scribble on a napkin. He's like, it's not the scribble on the napkin. It's the 20 years it took me to be able to make that scribble on the napkin look like it does. And it's like, that's exactly right about writing. My first book came out 15 years ago. I've learned a huge amount in that time about the industry and about the craft. And that time it's valuable to others. And so you do deserve to be remunerated for it. And I think, of course, there's a lot of good organizations out there that do pay writers properly. And, perhaps we should mention the Australian Society of Authors and their recommended rates, because that's something that not everybody knows about. But there are like recommended rates for various things: giving a workshop, doing a school performance, doing a
virtual visit, all that sort of, and that is a lifesaver, because I know that so many, like say kids authors, when they're just starting out, they go, I've been asked by my local primary school to come and give a talk. What do I charge? Do I do it for free? Yada yada. And all you do is just go to the website, check the rates of pay, and go, this is what I'm going to be charging, because it's part of the ASA rates, and all libraries, all schools know them.
That's right. So I feel like it's easy for me to say, I charge Australian Society of Authors rates, which are blah, blah, blah. It doesn't sound like I've pulled this figure out of the air. I'm overvaluing myself, saying, here's what our peak body for writers says my time is worth. Thank you very much. And of course, there might be exceptions. You might say, well, it's my son's primary school, so I'm going to go talk to them for free. or it's a not-for-profit that I really believe in, and I'm going to donate my time, and everybody else is also donating their time. But when it's an organization that's going to profit from your speaking or your time, there isn't any reason why you should do it for free. You've put in the time, you've got the expertise, you deserve to be paid for that, the same way anybody in any other industry deserves to be paid.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to when you're sort of starting out, it's that self-worth, and it's also, you know, that imposter syndrome. You know, I can't really charge for this. I can't charge for that.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
I'm gonna charge $350 for an hour for a talk. Really?
Yeah.
What do I know? I don't. But the thing is, people do know things. You do have experience, and you do have that knowledge, and people are willing to pay for that. They can do it more often.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, you do at the beginning think, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're going to pay me for this. But it's like, what? But why wouldn't they?
I know.
Later,
Yeah.
why wouldn't they? Yeah.
I mean, that's like I usually come home from doing a day school visits, you know, do 4 sessions. And I get home and the only thing I want to do is just pour a glass of wine and go, what a great day I've had. Fantastic. And I actually forget that I've got to send an invoice. And then I want to remember, I go, oh, that's a bonus. Absolute bonus.
Yeah.
So, you know, those sort of things are fantastic to have that realization. How much do poets earn? My husband asked me to ask you this. He's just released it. I'm going to sneak it up. I'm going to do this. This is his first book he's published. This is his first book in surrealist poetry. So, but how much do they earn?
Well, I predict that he's going to earn $2.20. No, I'm just mucking around. So people say that in the hierarchy, novelists earn the most, short story writers earn less, and poets earn next to nothing.
Okay, so he's got to keep his part-time job then.
Next to nothing. Yeah, so he's going to have to keep working for the bacon outside the home, I'm afraid. I mean, you know, I think poetry, like anything else, is like, you know, you might get 5 poems published in a really good journal and they might pay you $300 for them, and that's like amazing. But in terms of sales, oh my goodness, tiny, you know, really tiny. I mean, I don't buy poetry. I like poetry, but I can't remember the last time I bought a poetry book. It's like a very, very niche market. I think people do it a lot for the love. Don't be giving up the day job.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, look, the tortured artist syndrome leading on, this is a beautiful segue from the, I write for my art and I suffer for my art and all that sort of stuff, and I don't want to earn much money. Is the tortured artist syndrome, or the writer, is that still a thing? Is that still relevant in 2020?
I think that perception is fading somewhat. I think the idea that in order to make art, you have to be starving practically is kind of like, I think it's not really accepted anymore as a reasonable way to live. I think it's kind of like, okay, well, people aren't making very much money. The starving artist thing perhaps is still to some extent true, but that doesn't make it okay. And let's look at how we can change that. So there's a woman called Rebecca Giblin who's doing some really amazing research in this area. She's doing research into, you know, the breakdown of royalties, who gets the money, who's making money out of books, and why is the artist making less money than anyone else along the chain. What other models might there be for paying writers and artists? So, for example, one of the things that she's looking into is the fact that we get lending rights money for hard copy books in libraries, but we don't get lending rights money for ebooks, and we don't get lending rights money for audiobooks. So every time somebody borrows an audiobook from the library or borrows an ebook from the library, the writer gets nothing for that. Well, why? That makes no sense. If we have the model set up for paper books, we should be getting paid for the other kinds of books as well, because we are losing potential sales in that way. So she's working on trying to change that model and things like that. So I suppose there's a bit more kind of outrage when it's revealed, oh, the average income for a writer in Australia is $13,000 a year. And it's like, well, that's not okay. So I think there is still the starving artist syndrome, but there's no longer the sort of romanticization. Is that a word? Romantification?
Well, sure. We're writers. We can make it up.
Romantification of that syndrome. I think there is a kind of outrage about that. Like, well, this is not okay. How can we make this work better? There's countries like Finland where when an author in Finland publishes a book, the government buys 1,000 copies of the book and distributes them to libraries and schools. And so the author knows that at an absolute minimum, they're going to sell 1,000 copies. And in that way, the government is subsidizing art. And what a brilliant model. Everybody wins. The libraries win, the schools win, the author wins,
somehow I don't see a Liberal government doing that.
Oh, what do you mean? I mean, they're so supportive of the art.
I know. They haven't gutted it at all or anything like that.
Not in the slightest. No.
Because I know that some people used to, if you made money, if you started to be successful, then you're a sellout. You're a sellout. Yeah. You've compromised your artistic integrity to sell thousands of books and get, overseas deals and stuff like that. I think that's sort of loosening its grip as well. I heard the term abundant artist recently. I think Adam Wallace said it, abundant artist. And I really like that. Let's think abundance. Yeah,
that's nice. Yes.
Yeah. It reframes the whole vibe of the thing. And it forces you to look sideways for other revenue opportunities.
I think that is part of it too, is that people are perhaps getting a bit more creative and a bit more savvy about how other ways they can make money. And I do think that, we talked about the downside of social media before, but certainly a lot of my education about these kind of things has come through particularly Twitter, where I feel like there's quite a good community of writers talking about real industry stuff. And I think it's, you kind of learn, oh, I could do that. I could think about this. So I think there is a little bit more understanding of that. Whereas when I started out, there just wasn't really information about the industry. Like you only found that out kind of anecdotally if you happen to be chatting to someone at a writers' festival, and you still find out a lot in that way. But you can also Google pretty much anything now and someone will have written a blog post about it. We were talking just before the show started, though. Also, Fremantle Press have just released a book. Is it How to Be an Author?
It's How to Be an Author, The Business of Being a Writer in Australia by Fremantle Press. Yeah. And it's written by Georgia Richter and creative writing lecturer Deborah Hunn.
Yeah, and Georgia was my editor. I mean, she's been in the industry for such a long time. She really knows her stuff, and it's so valuable to understand how the industry works. It's, it's part of educating yourself as a writer. It's not just learning to write, but learning how the industry works, learning what you need to know to make things the best for you. So, I mean, when my first book came out, I didn't know that I could ask for a different font. I didn't know it was okay to say, I don't like this font and I don't think it suits my book.
Okay.
So there's just all these little things that you have no idea. You don't know how often you're going to get paid royalties, and you don't want to be the demanding person that's ringing up your publisher going, when am I getting my money? So you're just sort of sitting there, I wonder if I'll ever get any money, It's just, I think it's great that they've released that book, because I do think that there is a hunger for that knowledge in
I think so too,
right?
Because I think they've got contributions by a whole bunch of authors, right? WA authors. I think Natasha Lester's in there, Holden Shepherd's in there as well.
I'm not in there.
No, I'm not in there either. Fremantle Press. But I think it's a great resource for a lot of people. I mean, really I know that I will always keep learning. There's so much more to learn. And that's why talking to yourself, I've learned already a heap from this conversation. And because otherwise we sit in our little, I hate to use the word silos, but we sit in our little world, in our little room, and we're drawing, and we're writing, we're doing all that sort of stuff. And we only come out every now and then to talk to each other on social media or writers' festivals, and you learn a bit, and then you go back into your hollow. But to have a resource, like the Fremantle Press book, I think would be a great resource. And you just Google it, really. That's what I tell everyone. Just Google it. Whatever your question is, Google it. There will be an answer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when people say to me, how do I get published? I'm like, well, do you know how to use Google? Because there's the answer.
Yeah, exactly. I think I did the, I wrote an article on my blog about 3 years ago, my tips on how to get published, bullet points: pour one glass of wine, halfway through pour another glass of wine, read all this, and then all the way through Google how to write a synopsis, Google how to write an author bio, Google, here's your author platform, here's the basics. And every time someone asks me, this is the blog post, go read
Here's the link.
Here's the link, bang, and it's just so much easier.
Does that get a lot of hits, that page? Do you get a lot of traffic?
I think it does. No, I don't get as much now, because I don't think I've done the tags and all that properly. So when people Google how to get published, I don't think that page comes up. I haven't set it up properly, because that's another thing. The money that you put in behind the scenes to do this, your money to pay for your own website, the money for hosting, the money for this, the money for that. People don't see that, and that can frighten a lot of people as well. Like, how serious do you want to take this? Do you, like, the amount of times people go, oh, I don't think I want a website. Well, have a website, have a part of the author platform, have that profile. People have to just go to your website and see how professional that is, and how much, advice and all the blog posts you've got, or the advice that you share. And also you've got the links to your books. It's a fully functional website. That's a perfect example of what an author should have. And I think every author should have it.
Almost nothing except my own time. So I think I may be paid. I mean, it's a WordPress site. You can get completely free WordPress sites, but I think I paid to have my own domain and a few things like that. But yeah, it's not very expensive.
I think I pay about $100 a year or something, I think, whatever it is for mine. Mine's WordPress too.
You can do it relatively cheaply, and you can have a very simple website. You essentially need information about your books. You need a way for people to contact you, and you need a brief bio. You don't have to have a blog if you don't want to, but you do need a place where people, if they Google you, they can, because often I will think like, oh, I would like to interview this person, or I would like to ask them if they want to be on a panel. And then I look them up and I can't find a way to get in contact with them. And that's crazy.
Yes.
It's like, make yourself contactable. That's like a key thing.
Easily contactable. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if someone wanted to offer you money to do something and they couldn't get in touch with you. That would be terrible.
Oh, that would be disaster. So writers out there, get a little blog or do something with your contact details on it. Never know who could be wanting to give you money or a publishing contract. Annabel Smith.
Dying to give you money.
Annabel, look, thank you so much. How can people get in contact with you? How can they find out more about your books and about you? Because you also run a workshop on how to make money as a writer. Now, how often do you run that?
Well, that's actually one of my new workshops. So I've only run it once at Big Sky Festival. So yeah, that's brand new. So yeah, I probably start delivering that around the place at libraries in the near future. So the best way to find out what I'm doing is to go to my website, annabelsmith.com.
I'll put it under here.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. You can also subscribe to my blog or sign up for my newsletter on there. So maybe I can send you that link too. And yeah, that's a good way to find out what I'm doing around the place and my workshops. But I'm also on Facebook, Annabel Smith Author, and I'm on Twitter at Annabel Smith AUS.
Are we friends on Twitter yet, or are we following each other?
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
Twitter frightens me. So that's one thing I have to get over the fear of Twitter. I mean, every time I go on there, I just do it for updates on how America is just collapsing in on itself. But
Oh, well,
you know,
no, the key to Twitter is to curate a list.
yeah,
So I've got a list of that I call people who get Twitter, and that's just that doesn't mean that the other people don't get Twitter, but it's the people who tweet the things I want to read, because
gotcha.
otherwise I just get overwhelmed with depressing world news.
Mm.
And I really just want to follow people who tweet about writing or maybe their cats. And so or dogs I find also are acceptable. So yeah, you can't just have like the world coming at you through Twitter, otherwise you
It is
just
such
want
a
to.
destructive, sad face, but we're not going to go there. That's a talk for another day. Annabelle, thank you
Okay.
so much for sharing, and be open and honest. And I will now take a leaf out of your book, and I will share some of my failures and miseries and all
Yes,
that sort
do
of
it.
stuff to show I'm a real
Great.
person. It's not
You
just all
are
the
a
yeah,
real
yeah,
person,
yeah.
Josh, and
But
it's okay to have a bad day.
I like that. It's okay to have a bad day. That's my motto. Thank you very much, Annabelle.
Thank you, Josh.
Hi, thank you very much for watching the latest episode of Josh Langley Gets to Know. Got any questions? Whether you want to say whether you liked it, you didn't like the interview, and like my hair's too grey or something like that, post a comment below. I won't get upset. Okay. Now, gratuitous plug here. If you want to grab my books, Been You Is Enough, Okay to Feel the Way You Do, or Magnificent Mistakes, or all three, just go to my website at joshlangley.com.au, because it's about trying to change the world one book at a time, helping one kid just to feel good about who they are and feel good in their own skin. If we can just help one child, then they may help another child, then another one, then another one, and then that's how we slowly change the world. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next episode.